this is Will. Will's the product owner for the STV player.
Brilliant. Well, as Mike said, thanks so much for having us tonight. It's a real honour, so thanks so much for your time and giving up your evening. The STV player has been live since about July 2009. It's gone through various iterations. I've been with STV now for about 18 months, so I've been working through a process of sort of rebranding the player over the last year or so, and also sort of scaling up onto various platforms. So just want to talk through tonight where we are and perhaps some of the challenges we get along the way. So the current platforms we're on, as you can see, there's all the usual suspects. Got web, including responsive, iOS, Android, all that kind of stuff. UView, which is a big player for us, which I'll give you some details on in a little while. And most recently, Freeview Play. So I don't know how much you guys know about Freeview Play. So Freeview is obviously the digital UK EPG service that comes free for your TV service. They've now released what is effectively a competitor to UView. So set-top boxes, they're integrated with Panasonic televisions. So you get built-in EPG linked services, so you can link in from your EPG through to a player app. So we're live on there, as well as the likes of ITV, BBC and all those kind of guys as well. Works quite well for us because, and again I'll sort of touch on some of this stuff a bit further down the line, we get the regionalisation based on where the box is based, so it's based on the TV signal rather than any kind of method. So quite a lot going on already. In terms of what we're looking at, obviously lots to think about as well, and sort of various sort of feelings about which way we should take things. Apple TV, it's kind of interesting because I think the traction so far, especially up in Scotland, there's no real evidence of it really sort of being taken up. BBC iPlayer obviously did a big release, Apple did a big marketing push for them, so I think that helps, but from the point of view of numbers, it's not necessarily a core platform for us, but it's good to be there. It's Apple, it's an exciting product, and it probably will grow, so I think that's why we're sort of looking to develop it. Tizen is a Samsung operating system. You probably know it best from Curve TVs, which you may or may not have opinions about how successful they've been. I haven't got one myself. But yeah, so that's something we're developing on top of that as well. An interesting one is Virgin Media. So Virgin Media is kind of the first example whereby we're not specifically building a player app. So all these other platforms require us to build an app, whether it's bespoke code or HTML5 or whatever format is relevant for the platform. But Virgin Media is kind of like the first platform whereby we're effectively syndicating content. So we'll provide them transcoded content in the relevant formats, all the program and episode metadata, and just send that through to their service. So we're going through a process with them to get on their legacy platform, plus Virgin have plans, albeit a little way off yet, to sort of go on an IP platform as well. So I think that's quite an interesting time, and I think that's quite an interesting marker of perhaps where the industry is going, where we've been building all these apps all this time, and that may change a little bit in the sort of coming years. Windows is a big thing for us. So we've got an Xbox 360 app, which actually does quite well for us, despite our core customers are people that watch things like Emmerdale and Corrie. We do find at certain times of year, like when we've got things like X Factor, I'm the Celebrity, all that kind of stuff on Xbox does really well. So we've got an interest to build out an Xbox One app, and that's kind of sort of bundled in with Windows 10. So Microsoft had this sort of dream of one app to rule them all. So we're sort of seeing what they're going to offer, so we can try and build something out. PlayStation, it's kind of an interesting one. We had a PlayStation 3 app, which we retired last year. Did okay, but all these platforms, the challenge comes for STV because, as Mike sort of touched on, we are a commercial organisation. We have to think quite carefully about whether we want to onboard on it. All our customers will want us to be on all platforms because there'll always be a handful of people on every platform, but most of these have a cost for us to onboard with them, and then we have to weigh that up. And Sony, as an example, had quite aggressive revenue share models. So it's just something we have to think about and take on from that point of view. Chromecast, not necessarily a platform, depending on your view. It's kind of interesting. We didn't really pay much attention to it, but it just seems every time I launch an Android app, I just get a string of people saying Chromecast, Chromecast, Chromecast. So it's either the same guy with lots of email addresses, or people actually want it. So I know all four are out there doing it, so it's something we're going to start looking at. And it sort of feels natural. We've got an Android app, and we're doing stuff on using Android for Fire TV and all that kind of stuff. So it feels like it would fit. Now TV, I'm sure you guys know about as well, as a kind of more pay-as-you-go Sky service. Again, not something we pay a huge amount of attention to, but they've actually got 5% market share up here now, which is pretty good. So it's something we're going to start looking at. Bit weird, their apps are built in, you have to use Bright script rather than any other kind of language, so it's going to be a bit of a learning curve for us as well, that one as well. So might test out our agile skills, I think, as we go along the way. I just wanted to talk about, I wanted to try and be a little bit more open with people tonight, so I'm just going to sort of go through a few stats and sort of try and sort of talk you through a few trends as well. So this first one is, it just gives you sort of platform share really, so it's just showing what's been going on over the last 12 months. The first thing that kind of sticks out, which is not necessarily why I've shown this slide, is it shows our seasonality. So if you look from around about September, especially as you get into October, it's just these massive peaks. I'd like to say it's all to do with the amazing user experience and stability of play, but it's also a reflection of our content. So we had the Rugby World Cup last year, which just had a massive impact on our services, and we have to be, able to sort of scale up and sort of service those needs. And so there's a lot of user testing, a lot of load testing we do as well. But the other interesting thing, especially when you sort of look, when you're comparing last year down out to sort of the end of February this year, is the obvious decline of web. While it still does very well for us as a platform, it's definitely on its way down. iOS is our strongest platform, sort of holding strong. But connected TV is growing. Surprise, people want to watch TV on a TV device. So it's like it's gone full circle in some kind of crazy way now that the technology's caught up. Android is kind of good. We always hope it's a bit better for us. I think Android for us, it's a really interesting challenge. I mean, I'm sure you guys are sort of involved in this stuff in the crowd. It's so many devices and so many permutations of OSs and things like that can make it a little bit more challenging. We also find that generally people don't update their OSs perhaps quite as much as you might be forced to with like Apple devices, or what happens on TV devices, 9 times out of 10 you're just forced to update it in the background. So it's quite an interesting challenge for us for that one. So we find we have to support much older versions of Android OSs than we would normally. Just to break down those numbers in a slightly different format. So this is stream share. So the stats we look at, I mean, one of our biggest ones is stream starts. All these stats are basically based on stream starts. But we also look at things like stream completion ratio, so whether people are getting to the end. We're looking at whether people exit during adverts or exit before core video playback. We look at buffer stats and all that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, stream starts is a big currency for us, and that's what sort of sells the advertisers. Yeah, this pretty much sort of shows, this is back from October last year, shows like iOS and web kind of up there, connected TV and Android sort of kicking around, sort of around about the 20% mark. What's interesting though, if you compare that with this, which is our revenue, you'll notice that connected TV is actually our biggest earner. And when we first started seeing these stats, it was probably around about February, March last year when we really started to see this change starting to happen. We sort of scratched our heads a little bit about why it's happening. And I think one of the biggest reasons is one of our biggest platforms for connected TV at the moment is YouView. It's probably about 250k households in Scotland have got it. And it's just a much more integrated experience. So unlike a website or an iOS app or whatever, you can't, once you start playing that content, you can't really get away from it. The experience is integrated into you. And you also get the app, you get the app built into your box when you buy it, so there's no having to go and find apps and download them and that kind of thing. And it's just a bit more of a seamless experience. So you go and your ads are baked in, and so it just feels like that's the reason why. Fire TV is obviously it's been a massive growth area for us as well with Amazon. I'll show you some little bits on that as well later. That's just showing the stream share again from October, but I just brought that up again just to show you the difference comparing now with February, where it just shows again connected TV is pretty much neck and neck with web now, and especially with the death of Flash and things like that, it's just going to get bigger and bigger. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about, I just want to go through a few examples of what we call our player philosophy. So there's a few key things that myself as the product owner and a guy called Remy, who's our business owner, we always try and think about as we're running the product and as we're developing new features. The biggest one, it's a bit cheesy, a bit obvious, is content is king. We are a TV channel at the end of the day, so it doesn't matter what kind of bells and whistles we put on it, it's about the content. And We just have to make sure we get that content to people and it plays. And it's kind of been interesting as well because previously we've been quite reliant on one or two key shows, the likes of Coronation Street and Emmerdale, but I think ITV have kind of realised they didn't want a dependency on those one or two shows, and so the schedule this year in particular has been quite good for us. So sort of new dramas coming out, you know, more sort of individual programmes, and that's doing really well for us, and we're sort of noticing quite an interesting change. A stream started, a stream completed. So a lot has to happen for a video to successfully play, and I'm just going to go through some of the things that happen really. And it's, you know, lots of OSs, you know, lots of devices, you know, all that kind of stuff, and a lot of stuff can go wrong. So it's kind of fun. It can be a little bit hair-raising at times, especially if there's a live event going on. But we've got all kinds of stuff going on. So in this example here, like when you hit play, one of the first things that will be happening is Brightco. So Brightco is the video player we use for our catch-up services. We use something different for our live services as well. So that's going on, obviously, talking to our CDN, Akamai is who we use, to make sure the video plays. We've got Gigya. Gigya is what we currently use for our registration data. So at the moment, all the player content is behind a registration wall, which I'll talk about a little bit in a while. So that's got to happen, so it's just got to make sure that's all ticking away in the background. Uyala, who used to be a company called Video Plaza, that's who we use for serving all our ads. So on catch-up at the moment, all our ads are served on the client side, and Uyala do all the decisioning and actually deliver the assets in as well. So that provides an interesting challenge as well, because you've effectively got a break between the main content and when the ads happen. So there's that natural point where things could drop off, and it's also, you know, a natural time where users might decide to sort of jump out and go to other things as well. Comscore, Mike touched on, is what we use for our main analytics data, so that's recording everything in, so that's firing in, sending heartbeats all the time. Ubora is a tool that we use, it's mainly for measuring stream success, so we use that for measuring buffer ratios, keeping an eye on ISPs for particular users, and what we can do is, like, if we get customers contacting us that they've got a particular issue, perhaps with playback or, you know, speeds and all that kind of stuff, we can use their Gigya ID, which is a unique sort of hidden encrypted ID for a user, and we can check that in Ubora and just go and check out what's happening to that user, so we know what ISP they're on, know what CDN's going on and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of get a feel for whether that user might have a connection issue, and it just tells us a little bit as well. And it's really good because it gives us quite informative data, but also informs what we plan to do and what we might change in terms of the renditions and the bit rates we use. You know, average Scottish bit rate we seem to be getting is around about 1.3 megabytes in terms of broadband speeds. So not massive, you know, even though people are obviously buying up bigger packages now, so it's quite interesting. You know, we have to find that balance between getting the renditions right, but keeping the thing stable, so interesting challenge. Localytics is a marketing tool we use, so that's basically for sharing data on social networks and all that kind of thing, marketing. Kantar Media it's basically the front arm of the British Audience Research Board, so as a public service broadcaster we have to return those stats back to Barb, so they can report on usage rather than the traditional model of having a box on 500 TVs in people's homes around the country. So yeah, we have to implement that, we have to make sure it works. And then Google Analytics, which we use on occasion for various paid analytics. You know. So like I say, there's quite a lot going on, and as a product manager, one of my big things, I have to work on all those relationships, so we work very closely with all these partners. You know, we've got very strong relationships, talking about our roadmap and our platforms and what we're doing as well, so yeah, what's going on. Big thing for us when we relaunched the player last year was something called No Dead Ends. So it's the idea that there's always something else to watch. So this is an example of the web player. So when you get to the end, you've got a countdown that takes you to live, and it's also surfacing up other content. And we just, while it's kind of an obvious thing to have, people like Netflix are obviously very good at doing it. It was a really good way for us to start surfacing up other STV content that perhaps people aren't aware of. So we trialled it out. Definitely learned by pain. The first iteration was this kind of painful experience because it was based on the most popular programmes. We ended up getting stuck in this loop where you got recommended Coronation Street, then you got recommended Emmerdale, then you got recommended Coronation Street, which is great if you like those programmes. So, you know, but you know, it's something we built quickly. We got out there fast, and then we're sort of learning by it now and sort of developing all the time, and just sort of learning how we should sort of adapt the business logic to what we want. One of the other things Mike also touched on as well is the UX stuff. So it's a standard shot of our UX lab or UX room. where we have most of our stand-ups, to be honest, now as well. So we do a lot of UX testing, so every 3 to 4 weeks we get users in who come in and test out stuff, so it's either on live release features, or quite often what we're doing now is we're doing proof of concepts as well in advance, so give people multiple options and we'll get them in and test stuff out, and I think that works really well. You know, includes things like A/B testing as well. What we're starting to do with the player now, especially off the back of the success with the new stuff, is trying to engage a little bit more in open beta groups. So we're starting up sort of Facebook groups for iOS and Android just to get people a lot more heavily involved and just get that honest feedback. So rather than sort of fighting that customer feedback, it's actually engage with people and see what they want. Watch Live, it's a big thing for us actually. It's a growing thing. It sounds like a really weird thing to talk about, but it's kind of an expected thing now. This was about, these stats are probably from about 6 months ago, so Live was around about 20% of all our long form streams. It's probably up around about 30%. During the Rugby World Cup, it was 40%, so it's a big thing. We use a company called YoSpace, based down in London, who deliver our live streams. And at the moment, we've got live on our web, iOS and Android apps, but we're going to test out putting it on Fire TV soon as well, especially ahead of the Euros as well coming out this year. So it's just something that we pay a lot of attention to. Design consistency, go through this quite quickly really. When we rebranded the app last year, we realised just how disconnected all the services are. Even if you look at it now, our Samsung Fire TV apps, they're using the old design, but there's new releases coming up in the next few weeks. We've just gone through and just made sure that we've got consistent design experience, across big screen TV, through to web, iOS, Android, all that kind of stuff, so that wherever you are, on whatever platform you're on, you feel like you're getting that consistent experience, and that will be really key when we start to introduce some sort of cross-platform functionality in the coming months. So that's kind of philosophy. Now I just want to sort of touch on a few things. I guess I call opportunities and challenges, like the things that kind of give us headaches, but I always try and look on the positive side of what benefit we can get from it. I've kind of touched on this already, but yeah, player stability. The bottom line is that the thing has to work. You hit play, you expect the player to work, and it's not without our problems still. We work hard to sort of try and improve it, particularly on like platforms like Android and that kind of thing. And that's why getting the stats on buffer measurement, all that kind of stuff, exits before video playback, really tell us what's going on. So it's just really, really key for us. And I think people now, rightfully so, are unforgiving. They expect that TV experience on their device wherever they are, and it's not necessarily their problem if their connection is slow where they are. That's our problem to deal with and figure out how we can solve that for them. So that's obviously a big thing for us to sort of keep an eye on. Geo-restriction. So we are the Channel 3 broadcaster for Scotland, but we have to limit all that Channel 3 content, so all the Corries, X Factor, I'm a Celebrity, that all has to be limited within Scotland. So that's kind of fun as a project manager, because there's loads of compliance and loads of thinking you have to do. I mean, one of the biggest areas we sort of look at the geo side of things at the moment is we have 4 variants of the STV1 live stream. So depending on the postcode you use when you register for the player, you will get one of those 4 streams. And in each of those streams, there'll be streams of Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee and Aberdeen. You'll get the local news based on the area you're in. So these are all the things we have to think about really. In terms of how we control that at the moment, except for the TV stuff like Freeview Play and UV where I've talked about where it's based on the TV signal. It's basically self-declaration, so we ask for the user's postcode up front, and then based on that, they will be told whether they can access certain content or can't access other content. This example here is just somebody in a office who tried to get into something that is not available to them based on their AR. It's probably because they've entered an English postcode. So we redirect them to ITV, but also we're trying to push through some of our other content, some newer, some older, that perhaps people aren't aware of, just in that sort of attempt to sort of try and keep people within the service. Like I say, it's a real interesting challenge for us because there's a lot of compliance that goes on to make sure we adhere to those rules. People will try and find ways around the system. And, we did try looking at IP detection for a while, but it's not always accurate, and, there's a lot of database requests and things like that. So for now, we go with postcode sort of sign up, as it were. And we've got that agreement with ITV. We work really closely with those guys. In particular, we've got really good product links with those guys as well. So always talking about how we can sort of develop and change the the experience for regionalisation. So just want to talk very quickly as well, just about sort of our local TV offering, and this is probably where we touch a little bit more with the news stuff as well. So at the moment we have sort of two key sort of licenses for our TV stuff, and that's Glasgow and Edinburgh. This is for the city content. This is non-channel free stuff. But last year we were ordered Aberdeen, Dundee, and Ayr. And so within the next 12 to 24 months, we need to come up with a strategy for delivering that content. So at the moment, we have STV Glasgow and STV Edinburgh, which are delivering local-based content. But we're trying to think about what we're going to do with that content, whether we develop almost like an STV2, like a mini network, or whether we'll treat each of them individually, and sort of how we'll take that really. So I find that quite an interesting challenge, because that's where we can perhaps think about, if you're signed in as a user, do you get your local news plus your local sort of video news content and all that kind of stuff. So there's some interesting thinking we need to do around about that. And then, the biggest area where we handle this at the moment is the STV news. So again, this just shows here where we've got the STV Glasgow, Aberdeen, Edinburgh and Dundee. And it's just how we link that or take snippets back from what Mike and the guys are doing to sort of try and bring the two products together a little bit more, which is an interesting challenge. This is my first big revelation of the night, is people hate registration, especially when you don't have that open detail. So we have a business KPI to get registrations. We believe it's useful to get it so we can target data, so we can look at personalisation in the future. But it's a real challenge. It's a challenge because users, like I say, don't like it, being quite frank here. And also, technically, it's quite a challenge as well. And again, with the registration stuff, we've tried different models. So we've tried some testing where you have to sign up on the app startup, and then we've tried other models where you register or sign in an episode playback and things like that, just to see what people like as well. But I think this is a really interesting challenge as a product owner, where you've got that balance between what the customers want and what you should do, and then what the business wants, and what the business wants is going to support a lot of the revenue generation that we need to do as well to keep running as a business. My other revelation is people hate adverts. Surprise, surprise. So, as Mike says, STV is a commercial business. We don't have a license fee at the moment. We'll get some soon. People forget about that sometimes, and so we have to put adverts on our content. So at the moment, all our ads are served client side, like I said, with Uyala. So we go off and call those adverts at various cue points, either at the beginning, the middle, or at the end of the program, and then it'll just fire back those adverts and play them through. So quite a lot of challenges there. One of the biggest challenges for us, particularly on the web, is ad blockers, which is kind of a sort of never-ending battle. And it's something we've sort of tried to sort of interrupt before. So we've tried tools and ways of sort of trying to say to users, we think you're using an ad blocker. So we've tried to sort of say, look, we know you're using an ad blocker, turn it off, or you can't watch the content. But it became very difficult. It becomes very hard from a business logic point of view to sort of understand, is someone actually using a blocker or not? It's very inferred, so you have to be a bit careful. So the route we're sort of taking more, and we started with live. So we were the first UK broadcaster to have server-side ad insertion on our live stream. So all the live streams just come with the ads already baked into the stream once the user gets it. So once the user gets it, they just get a continuous stream. Those ads still have a decision made in terms of what gets served, in terms of region, various other data based on what Uyala sent, but it just makes the experience and the quality of service a lot better, and it also makes it, to a certain extent, unless you're good at hacking back-end systems and that kind of thing, ad blocker proof as well. So yeah, that's sort of something we're sort of working on quite a lot really. Competitors and expectations. So there's other players out there that we're naturally and rightfully so going to get compared to. The obvious being the BBC iPlayer, ITV, who, like I say, we've got really good connections with. We work quite close with them, all four, Modify. And even to a certain extent, like Amazon and Netflix, while you wouldn't necessarily compare us from a products and service offering point of view, they're players, they're great, they look great, they work great, so people are going to compare us, and that's rightfully so. But it is a challenge. I mean, like BBC iPlayer as an example, I think they get something like 960 million stream starts a month, where we're kicking around about the 2 million mark. So in terms of like the balance of like what we can handle resource-wise to make these things good, it's quite an interesting challenge. But Relatively speaking, we like to think we punch above our weight though. Yeah, I just want to finish off sort of talking a little bit more about what we're doing and sort of looking ahead into the future. So the biggest thing I would say is the connected TV growth. So we're pushing more of our development resource towards developing the connected TV apps now. There's some quite interesting developments going on there, and just the growth as well. I mean, Fire TV, Fire Stick in particular, the little device which you can pick up. It's 35 quid at the moment, but if you hit on Black Friday, you can get them as cheap as £7 or £19. It's just crazy. We've seen like 600% growth in the last 12 months. It's just been absolutely brilliant. And then Amazon as a partner in particular have been really good. They're a very proactive company in terms of sort of working with us, in terms of like doing regional advertising as well, which I'll show you now.
Hello. Back in the spring, as you probably remember, I suddenly became unbusy. And that was okay, because I had one of these, an Amazon Fire TV stick. Everything you could possibly want. STV player, Netflix, there, Amazon Prime. It's almost perfect. No, wait. It is perfect.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good example where a big company like Amazon have been really proactive in terms of sort of serving the needs of regional companies. That advert was specifically regionalised with the STV player just for the Scottish market. Down south you got, I think it was Channel 5 at the time, because they were the only guys going on it. I think ITV and all four have only just sort of jumped on board of Fire Stick as well. The fact that we get this kind of integration with these guys is just amazing. They're always open and always talking to us about new things. Funny enough, David was talking through some of this with Matt before, but with Amazon have also spoken to us about potentially developing something for Amazon Echo. The idea that you can talk to it and sort of call into the player, perhaps some kind of link with the Fire TV as well. But I think it's just an example where Amazon as a company has just been really proactive and just really encouraging of the fact that we built products for them, so they want to work with us. The other kind of things I want to work on is kind of going back to the sort of point I was making about registration. So, if we want to have registration, and particularly we want to introduce it onto the big screen TV, which in itself is quite an interesting UX challenge, is you've got to offer sort of some kind of cross-platform functionality. So things like Stop Resume, which we're just starting to test out and introduce on our iOS app. It's just that idea that you start watching something on one device and you can go to any device that you have that's got the player on and continue that experience. I think that's an example where obviously it's a little bit more richer from that point of view. And like I say, we're looking at TV registration as part of trying to achieve that KPI. There's lots of questions we have to ask when we come up with that, so there's quite a lot of workshops from a UX point of view. It's like I say, should the registration be mandatory or non-mandatory? Should you actually register on the device? So we've been doing a lot of designs and proof of concept testing on whether you actually do a full registration using your remote on the TV, or whether you go off and you're given a PIN code and you complete your registration on the web. And ITV I think have been using the PIN code model, whereas others do it another way. So it's quite an interesting challenge, that one, to sort of see what works from that point of view. And yeah, I think all that kind of testing is good as well. And then favourites as well. So just that idea that you can start to sort of either passively or actively start to build up your sort of own favourites as well, which I think is really interesting. So one of the other things we've been looking at as well, over the last 12 months there's been a bit of a shift. So all these guys, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, they've kind of gone through a real rebranding exercise. So it's all about players and on-demand and all that kind of stuff. And they're all now just their homepages are dedicated to the player concept. So ITV they're called the ITV Hub, but I think they'll slightly get rid of that. It's about the whole family. But ITV.com now is very much about the player, rather than just being a sort of separate show site and things like that. And same with all four. It's Channel 4 is all about that now. So I think it raises an interesting challenge for us about what we will do with that player brand as time goes on. I don't necessarily think we will take that route. It's kind of something that Mike and I kind of tattle about, I guess, over coffees every morning, because I think STV in many ways is perhaps more similar to the BBC, where we're as much a news organisation as your work recently shows us. We are a player organisation and about that content. So it might be that it has to be some kind of hybrid model of news and player on that homepage, rather than just saying we're about player or we're about news. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing, and I think that's going to be a real opportunity to sort of really bring the two products together, really. So, Yeah, and then just very quickly, I just thought I'd touch on, Mike's touched on it as well, just around the structure of our team. So how we are, we've got business owners for player, the news work, and we've also got a data work stream that just looks at all the data and how we're getting it in as well. And then within that, there's the product owners, so there's myself for players, Mike for news, and there's a guy called Andy for our data stuff. And then within that, we've just got a whole pool of development resources. So at the moment, we've got about 4 or 5 designers, UX designers as well. We've got 2 iOS developers, 2 Android developers, now that we're doing all that stuff in-house. We've got 10 front-end developers, 10 back-end developers, and a whole bunch of QA guys as well. And it's quite interesting. I mean, we try and mix it up as much as we can. So, you know, no one team sort of stays on a product too long, so they might spend sort of 3 or 6 or 12 months, depending on the size of the product, and then they'll move on to the next product. So it's just so everyone's got an understanding of almost like the STV family of the cross-product stuff going on. And it's quite interesting as well, and it just keeps us sharing ideas. And, you know, as devs go around, you know, if they're developing something new for the news app, and it might be to do with players and things like that, and video delivery, they'll be like, oh, well, I worked on players, so this is something I need to think about. So I think from our point of view, it just helps us think about that a little bit more. And also for the player, sort of behind all of this, we have what we call like a back-end infrastructure team. So it's like 4 or 5 back-end developers, and all they do is just work on API updates and thinking about infrastructure, because all these platforms run off a central API now that's all built in-house, so it's all built in PHP. And we have to just think about how we handle that, because the rights management for content is different depending on the platform you're on. Some platforms will have features that others don't. So, for example, we'll have short form on web and iOS, but there's not really a need to have it on TV, so we just have to think about how that's controlled from the back-end point of view to make sure the wrong content doesn't end up on the wrong platforms and that kind of thing. Yeah, we do a lot of iterative development. We're getting better at it. We're still working on it. We use a target process. I'm sure you guys use various other tools like Jira and what have you. Yeah, and it's just that whole idea, you know, especially once you get through the big build, like Mike's just been through on news and we went through a player. It's just like developing new features quickly. So at the moment, we're trying to spin up getting live done on Fire TV really quickly, just so we can get it out there, test it out, and see what it's like. And then once it's there, we're going to try and put registration on just one device, just on Fire TV, see how that works out. And it almost gives us that live sort of beta trial without sort of, you know, spending too much time on something. You know, something we can work up very quickly. And then just really from the point of view, there's just, I mean, STV's a big business relatively, and it's just so many people involved. I mean, you know, I've talked about the development side of things, but, you know, it's like I said, we have to deal with compliance, there's legal, there's finance. You know, I have massive connections with broadcast ops, there's the legal guys at ITV, all kinds of stuff, and obviously our customers and our directors and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's a really fun product. You know, we're getting better. I don't think we're all the way there yet, but it's a really exciting place to work. And, no, it's been great. So I think thank you for all your time tonight. Take any questions now. Really.